All right, so just imagine opening a report, and it predicts that the space economy will be worth almost $2 trillion by 2035. That's not sci-fi. We're talking about something that's happening in the very near future. And that's what we're diving into today. It's a report that's from the World Economic Forum, and it's all about the future of the space economy.
And what I find fascinating is that it doesn't just focus on rockets and satellites. It really gets into how space technology will impact almost every part of our lives here on Earth.
Yeah, it's not just about astronauts and moon landings. We're talking about how we get our groceries delivered, how we track climate change, all thanks to space tech. Now, the report splits this future space economy into two main categories: the space backbone and the space reach. Can you explain what those terms mean?
Sure. So the backbone is referring to the more traditional elements of the space industry. So things like building satellites and launching them, ground stations, all the infrastructure that helps support space operations. It's really the foundation of the space economy. And right now it's the larger part. It's a little over half of the industry, clocking in at about $330 billion.
Okay, so that's the backbone. Now tell me more about the space reach. That's where things get interesting.
Absolutely. The space reach is all about how space tech is changing industries here on Earth. It's about the applications and services that rely on space-based things like satellites in order to work. Think GPS navigation, satellite communications, Earth observation data. These are all part of the space reach.
So when I use an app to order food and then I track it on my phone, am I part of the space economy?
Yes, you are. Those apps use GPS satellites to find out where you are and to track the delivery driver. And it's way more than just food delivery. We're talking about global supply chains, financial transactions, precision agriculture, disaster response. All these industries are changing thanks to the space reach.
The report says that the space reach is already worth $300 billion. That's a crazy number. And what's even more amazing is that it's predicted to grow much faster than the traditional backbone.
That's right. The report says that 5 industries will drive most of this growth. They are supply chain and transportation, food and beverage, state-sponsored defense, retail and consumer goods, and digital communications. By 2035, those 5 will make up over 60% of the space economy's growth.
Wow, that's a huge amount. Let's take a closer look at each of those. Start with supply chain and transportation. That's going to be the biggest winner of the space boom. It'll be worth $412 billion by 2035. Why is that?
Well, think about how much our world depends on moving goods across borders and oceans. Space technology is making that entire system much better, more efficient, cheaper, and more resilient. We're talking about tracking cargo, optimizing routes, even predicting problems like bad weather or political unrest, all thanks to space.
So space is helping us get everything from clothes and electronics to food and medicine delivered faster and better.
Exactly. The report actually talks about a really interesting example of how space tech can be used to improve food security. There's a program called Surveyor. It's run by NASA and UNIDIDE. They use satellites to track things like water shortages that could impact crops.
So by looking at images from space, they can see if there might be food shortages and act before it happens. That's like an early warning system for food.
It is, and that information is very helpful to food and beverage companies. They use it to make better decisions about where to get ingredients, logistics, even prices, and that helps everyone.
Wow. It's incredible to think that something as far away as space can have such an impact on things here on Earth.
It is. It's all about connections that we don't expect between space and our lives. And as the space economy continues to grow, those connections will only get stronger and more important.
You've definitely given me a lot to think about. And we've just started talking about the space economy. But let's switch gears for a minute and talk about another big part of this: national defense. The report says that space is going to be more important than ever for keeping countries safe. That industry alone will be worth $251 billion by 2035.
That's a huge jump, more than 3 times its size now. Recent events like the conflict in Ukraine have shown just how important space is in war.
Yeah, the report talks about that specifically. It says that both sides in Ukraine have relied heavily on space technology from private companies for everything: troop movements, gathering intel, secure communications, targeting.
Exactly. And it's not just about the military. Space tech is also important for things that governments do to help people, like disaster management, environmental monitoring, border control, even bringing internet to places that don't have it.
That last one is very interesting. Using satellites to bring education and healthcare to communities that don't have other infrastructure is a great idea. The report mentions some examples.
They do. They talk about how countries like Peru and Thailand are already doing this. They're using satellite internet to connect schools and villages, provide telemedicine consultations, even give educational content to communities without reliable internet access.
Wow. It's incredible to think that space tech can help to improve lives around the world.
Huh.
But let's move on to another industry that's being changed by space: digital communications. The report says this will be a $70 billion industry by 2035, mostly because of the growth of satellite internet. What's driving all of this growth?
It's the mega constellations, those huge networks of satellites like Starlink and OneWeb. They're designed to bring fast internet to even the most remote places.
So it's like when electricity or the telephone became common, suddenly connecting people in ways they never imagined. Now satellite internet can do the same, connecting billions of people who don't have reliable or affordable internet right now.
That's right. And with more people online, industries will change. We could see e-commerce booming in remote areas, online education reaching students in far-off places, telemedicine giving healthcare to those who need it most. The possibilities are incredible.
It sounds like how we connect as a global society is about to change in a big way. And that brings us to the last of the 5 big industries from the report: retail and consumer goods. Now, this one might seem a bit less obvious. How is space tech changing how we shop and what we buy?
It might not be obvious, but space tech is already a big part of the things we use every day. Smartphones, smartwatches, fitness trackers, they all use things like GPS satellites to know where you are.
So those tiny little GPS chips are a big business for the space industry.
Yes, they are. The report says that market will be worth $170 billion by 2035. And that's because we just keep buying more gadgets and using location-based services.
That's an amazing number. And it's not just about tracking how many steps we take or finding the closest coffee shop anymore.
It's not. Space data can be used to make our experiences better, improve efficiency, even completely change industries. Think about what we could do with virtual reality and augmented reality, using satellite images and positioning data.
I can picture it now. Exploring a city in virtual reality.
Right.
Or having information about my surroundings pop up in my vision, all thanks to space.
Exactly. It's an exciting time to be alive. The space industry is changing so fast. And the ways we could use space technology are limited only by our imagination. But before we get too excited, let's take a step back and think about the challenges we face.
Good point. It can't all be easy. What are some of the problems that could happen as the space economy grows?
Well, one of the biggest is sustainability. With more satellites being launched all the time, there's a higher risk that they will collide with space debris. We need to figure out how to manage this problem and use space resources responsibly.
Right, so it's not just a Hollywood thing where a chain reaction of debris destroys everything in orbit.
It's not. It's a real concern. The report says that countries and private companies need to work together to solve this. We need rules for space, just like we have rules on Earth, so that we can keep using space for a long time.
That makes sense. What else do we need to think about as we enter this new space age?
Another big challenge is making sure that everyone has equal access to space and the benefits it brings. As space becomes more open, we need to make sure that only a few powerful countries or companies control the resources. We need to create a fair and inclusive space economy that helps everyone.
So it's not just about the technology. It's about making sure that the benefits are shared and that everyone has a chance to be part of this new era.
Exactly.
Welcome back. I'm ready to dig deeper into those incredible reach applications that we talked about earlier. We talked about how space technology is having a big impact on different industries. But now I want to get into the specifics.
Yeah.
How is this technology actually being used to solve real-world problems here on Earth?
One area where space technology is making a huge difference is Earth observation. We talked a little bit about the server program earlier, but this field is much bigger and more important than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, we discussed how Server uses data from satellites to monitor water resources and figure out if there might be food shortages. But the report goes even further. It highlights how Earth observation is becoming essential for all kinds of things.
That's right. Satellites are like our eyes in space. They're constantly collecting tons of data about our planet. They're being used to keep an eye on deforestation, track the movement of glaciers, predict and respond to natural disasters, check the health of crops and ecosystems, monitor air and water quality, even map how cities are growing and how infrastructure is being built.
It's like having a continuous flow of information about the health of our planet. It's super valuable for governments, businesses, researchers, really anyone who needs to understand how the Earth is changing and make smart decisions.
Exactly. And this data is becoming more detailed and easier to access. thanks to improvements in satellite technology and data analytics. The report actually mentions something called digital twins. They're basically virtual copies of physical things like buildings, cities, even entire ecosystems, all created using Earth observation data.
Oh, wow. So instead of just looking at static images, we can now create these dynamic interactive models that let us simulate different scenarios, test out new ideas, and make better decisions based on real-time data.
You got it. Imagine city planners using a digital twin to model traffic flow and make transportation systems better, or architects using it to design buildings that are energy efficient and don't harm the environment. The possibilities are pretty amazing.
It's incredible. It sounds like there are almost unlimited ways to use Earth observation data. What other specific examples of space technology are changing industries?
Well, we've talked about how positioning, navigation, and timing, or PNT, using satellite systems like GPS, are really important for things like ride-hailing and delivery. But PNT is also crucial for the development of self-driving vehicles, which is another big area of growth for the space economy.
That makes sense. Self-driving cars use a lot of different sensors, but getting accurate and reliable location data from satellites is key for navigation, especially in areas where other signals might be weak or not available.
Exactly. And it's not just cars. We're talking about autonomous drones for deliveries and surveillance, autonomous ships for transporting cargo, even self-driving tractors and other farm equipment. All these applications benefit from the precision and global coverage that space-based PNT provides.
Wow, so space technology is helping to shape the future of transportation, on land and at sea. This is truly mind-blowing. Now, you mentioned another industry where space is really important, even though it's not so obvious, the financial sector. How does space tech affect something as earthbound as finance?
It all comes down to timing financial transactions, especially in today's fast-paced global markets, need to be synchronized with incredible precision down to the millisecond. And that level of precision is only possible because of the incredibly accurate atomic clocks on GPS satellites.
So the same satellites that help me find my way around are also making sure that my credit card transactions go through without any problems.
Exactly. Those atomic clocks provide a universal time reference that financial institutions around the world use to sync their systems and make sure that transactions are processed in the right order and at the right time.
I never would have thought that something as simple as using my credit card would involve space technology. It's amazing how integrated space-based systems are into our daily lives.
It really is. And that's a key point from this report. Space isn't some far-off field anymore. It's part of our modern world, even if we don't always see it. We all benefit from these space-based technologies, whether we're aware of it or not.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It seems like space tech is behind so much of the modern world. From how we communicate and travel to how we shop and manage our money. It's almost like we're living in a space-powered society without realizing it.
I like that. We're all space travelers in a way, even if we never actually go to space.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Now, the report also talks about some things that seem straight out of science fiction. Space tourism becoming more common and manufacturing things in orbit, and even space-based solar power. Are these just crazy ideas, or could they really happen in the future?
It's true that those things are still in the early stages, but they show the potential for the space economy to grow in ways we can't even imagine right now. The technology is improving rapidly, and as it gets cheaper to get to space, these once futuristic ideas are starting to look more and more possible.
I can imagine a future where people take weekend getaways to space hotels, where factories in space create special products taking advantage of zero gravity, and where clean energy is beamed back to Earth from solar power stations in space. It sounds like science fiction, but the report says it could happen in our lifetime.
It does sound like sci-fi, but the technology is being developed and tested right now. The report specifically mentions how big rockets like SpaceX's Starship could be used to make it much cheaper to get to space. And that would make these ambitious projects more realistic. It's like the difference between traveling by horse and buggy and flying in a jet plane. It would change everything for space exploration and development.
So what needs to happen for these futuristic ideas to become reality? What are the things we need to overcome?
Well, as we talked about before, sustainability is really important. We need to figure out how to deal with space junk and use resources in space responsibly, so we don't create a dangerous environment that could make it hard to do things in space in the future.
It's like we're at a fork in the road. We can either be responsible and make sure that we can keep doing things in space, or we can just keep doing things the way we are now and risk turning space into a giant junkyard that could set us back for generations.
I agree. And besides sustainability, we also need people to keep investing in research and development. Governments and private companies need to work together to push the boundaries of space technology and make these big projects happen.
And international cooperation is also essential, right? Because space belongs to everyone. And no one country or company can do everything on its own.
Absolutely. We need to work together to create clear rules and regulations, share knowledge and resources, and work together to make sure that this new era in space benefits all of humanity, not just a few. We need a shared vision for the future of space, one that focuses on sustainability, inclusivity, and peaceful collaboration.
You're describing a future that's both inspiring and challenging. It's clear that this new space age will require us to think differently, work together more, and be committed to protecting our shared environment in space.
I agree, it's a big task. But I think we can do it. Humans have faced and overcome huge challenges before, and I believe we can do the same when it comes to exploring and developing space.
I'm feeling a mix of excitement and worry, to be honest. I'm really inspired by what we could achieve, but I also see how big the challenges are. It's a lot to process.
I know. It's a lot to take in, and it can feel overwhelming sometimes. But that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to think about the good and the bad of this new space age,
Yeah.
and to talk about what kind of future we want to create.
Well said. You've given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. We've covered a lot in the second part of our deep dive.
Well.
But the conversation is far from over. When we come back, we'll switch gears and focus on the human side of the space economy. We'll talk about what all this means for each of us and what role we can play in shaping this exciting but uncertain future. So we've talked about how big the space economy is going to be and all the industries that are going to be changed by it and the challenges that we're going to have to face. But now I want to bring it back down to Earth. How will the space economy actually impact our daily lives?
Well, that's a great question. It's easy to get caught up in all the cool tech and the numbers and the big dreams of space exploration, but at the end of the day, this is about how space is going to change the world that we live in, the jobs that we do, the communities that we're a part of.
Yeah, the report does a really good job of describing what the world might look like in 2035 when space tech is a part of almost everything.
Yeah, the World Economic Forum puts together a really interesting scenario in the report to show how this might all play out.
I'd love to hear more about it.
Okay, so picture this. It's 2035, and you can get super fast internet anywhere on the planet, even if you're in the middle of nowhere, thanks to those satellite constellations that we were talking about before.
So you're saying that working remotely could truly be location independent and that people in even the most isolated communities could have access to education and healthcare.
Exactly. And think about how much better we'd be able to respond to disasters. Satellites could give us real-time data on wildfires, floods, earthquakes, which would mean that relief efforts could be faster and more effective, and that could save lives and property.
It would be like having this global safety net watching over us from space.
I like that. And on a more day-to-day level, imagine how much more amazing those personalized services we talked about could become. Your smart devices could anticipate what you need, help you get around, suggest the perfect place to go hiking based on the weather, connect you with people who have similar interests, all thanks to space.
That sounds incredible. But let's be real for a minute. I mean, not everyone's going to be happy about all these changes, right? Some people are going to be worried about relying on tech so much, about their privacy being invaded, about the idea of constantly being watched from space.
Those are definitely valid concerns, and the report acknowledges that as we go through this technological revolution, we need to think about the ethical and societal implications. It's not just about what we can do, but about how we do it. How do we make sure that these technologies benefit all of humanity, protect our privacy, and let us keep our freedom?
That's a big responsibility for all of us, not just the people making decisions and the companies, but for everyone living in this increasingly connected world. So what can we do as individuals to prepare for this space-powered future and help shape it in a positive way?
The first thing is to stay informed. Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, keep up with the news about space tech and how it's being used. Understanding these trends is key to making smart choices and having meaningful conversations about the impact.
It all comes back to knowledge is power, right? The more we know about this rapidly changing field, the better prepared we'll be for whatever comes next.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions, to push back against assumptions, to talk about the ethical side of space technology. It's not about just accepting every new gadget or service that comes along, but thinking critically about how it affects our lives and our society.
Right. We need to be active participants, not just passive consumers. And we have to hold the people developing and using these powerful technologies accountable and have thoughtful discussions about the kind of future we want to build.
That's a great point. And for those of you who are inspired and want to get more involved, think about exploring careers in the space industry. It's a field that's growing super fast and needs all kinds of talent, engineers, scientists, business people, policymakers, even artists and communicators.
So it's not just about being an astronaut. There are so many ways to contribute to space exploration and developing technologies that benefit everyone.
Exactly. And even if you're not working directly in the space industry, think about how space technology might change your field. How could you use these new capabilities to come up with new ideas, create value, and make a difference?
This deep dive has been an amazing experience. We've talked about the mind-blowing potential of the space economy, the industries that are being transformed, the challenges and opportunities that are ahead, and the profound impact that it will likely have on our lives, our work, and our future. I'm feeling inspired, a little bit overwhelmed, but definitely more aware and engaged.
I'm glad to hear that. And that's really what we were hoping to accomplish with this deep dive, to spark your curiosity, encourage you to reflect, and give you the tools to help shape the future of space. Because as this report shows so clearly, the future of space is connected to the future of humanity.
I love that. And I'm already looking at everything around me, my phone, the internet, even the food I eat, with a new appreciation for how much space technology is involved. It's a reminder that we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves, connected to this vast and expanding universe.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And as we move into this new space age, let's remember that the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something that we create through our choices, our actions, and our collective imagination.
What a powerful message. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the future of space. Until next time, keep looking up, keep exploring, and keep dreaming big.